Chairman. If I could, Mr. John Gregory is going to be with us to present Proclamation 14-09, which is an amendment to Proclamation 08-02 regarding North Cumberland WMA.
Yes, this amendment to Proclamation 1409 is, well, the new Proclamation 1409 would amend 802, which was the proclamation that established the North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area. We have successfully negotiated a lease for 43,000 acres that is north up to the Kentucky line from the North Cumberland WMA, and we'll make it a what we call a Tackett Creek unit of that WMA. And we request approval of this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Chairman Griggs, the Wildlife Management Committee, and I recommend passage of Proclamation 14-09.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Motion on Proclamation 1409 to amend Proc 0802 North Cumberland WMA passes. Ms. Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask Mr. Benedict to join us to introduce Proclamation 14-11 regarding migratory bird hunting and as well as seasons and regulations.
Good morning, thank you. We recommend passage of Proclamation 1411 as amended with a split waterfowl season. The dates are on the screen there. The weekend before Thanksgiving, the season would open for 2 days. This is a statewide portion of the season, November 22nd through 23rd, with a follow-up season, the remaining 58 days, opening the Saturday after Thanksgiving and running through the last Sunday in January, January 25th. And there's other changes as well below that would be corresponding to those same dates. And at the very bottom of the slide, Sandhill Crane season date, the recommendation would be that the season be November 22nd and 23rd, and then November 29th through January 1st, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Benedict. Mr. Chairman, this is the recommendation from the Wildlife Management Committee. This is an amended option to the original proclamation and would encourage passage.
Okay, am I taking that as a form of motion for you, or do you want me to ask for a motion?
I did not make a motion.
I didn't
and
think
I would
you did.
not like to make a motion.
I understand, and I totally understand it.
With
So
respect.
I understand. We are in full commission, so anybody on the commission is allowed to make that motion. Do I hear approve? All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, it's been properly made and seconded, and now I'll ask for discussion. No discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
I believe the ayes have it, but if somebody on the commission would like a roll call vote, I'll request it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not requesting a roll call vote, but if the secretary could record me as no,
Okay,
but
I'll
I'm
ask
not
for it.
requesting a roll call vote.
Okay. Does anybody else like to be recorded as no?
I would like to be recorded as no. This is Jim Ripley.
Jim Ripley, Trey Tigg, anyone else? Okay. All right. Motion on Proclamation 1411, migratory bird hunting season regulation as amended did pass. Okay, Ms. Woodson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with that, if we could move to Chief Nickajack to discuss Proclamation 1413, which is an amendment to Proclamation 1405 regarding wildlife management area regulations.
Yesterday, we proposed Proclamation 14-13 to correct an error that was discovered in the WMA proclamation. That amendment is simply to shorten the closure time of the bear hunting season, or the bear closure on North Cherokee WMA. We recommend that you pass Proclamation 14-13.
Thank you, Chief. And Mr. Chairman, Griggs, the Wildlife Management Committee, recommend passage of Proclamation 1413.
I take that as a motion.
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
It's been properly made second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion is passed on proclamation 1413, amending Proc 1405 Wildlife Management Area regulations. Ms. Woodson?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time, but that is the conclusion of the recommendations from the Wildlife Management Committee.
Okay, moving right along, I will go to Boating Law Enforcement Committee, Chairman David Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Ryder.
Thank you, Commissioner Watson. Yesterday, we requested Proclamation 1412, which is a temporary suspension of a no-wake zone on Nickajack Reservoir, and it'll allow the operation of a drag boat association race October 10th, 11th, 12th, 2014 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. there at the Marion County Park.
Mr. Chairman, the Boating and Law Enforcement Committee recommend passage of Proclamation 14-12.
Okay, all right, I have a motion, I have a second. Second. All right, I have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, Proclamation 1412, temporary no-wake zone rule suspension, Nickajack Reservoir passes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. At this time, I've had a request from a gentleman all that would like to address the commission. If Mr. Nick Crafton would come to the podium, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Griggs and Commissioners. My name is Nick Crafton. I live at 1256 Dovecrest Road in Memphis, Tennessee. I am bad to hang out in Haywood County, though. I don't have an action item today, but I did want to help raise awareness with the commission and the agency about an issue that I've been watching for about 5 years. I'm also sad to learn, I'm a chemical engineer and a consultant to industry, but I'm also sad to learn yesterday that I was not drawn for the elk hunt. I want to just briefly have some slides. I don't do PowerPoint, but share with you some information about a very special place on this planet and in the state of Tennessee. Of course, the first thing that happens when you throw a map like this up, everybody looks to their home and or their hunting ground. And I'm sorry I couldn't get the eastern part of the state, but we have such a diverse and great state that we can't get it all on one map. But as you can see, this is Kentucky and Illinois and Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, on across. Anyway, here is Memphis, if I can get the pointer there. Actually, I don't know how that square developed. Anyway, here's Memphis, and the map in blue and red is generated by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. They study water quality across the state. The places you see in gray have not been assessed at all, and the places you see in blue are fully supporting fish and aquatic life. The places in red, unfortunately, are not supporting fish and aquatic life according to the TDEC water quality criteria. As you can see, in the west there, as our state breaks down in ecological regions, in ecoregion 74B, I want to concentrate on that for a moment and pull up our part of the state. Now, for reference, Jackson is going to be over toward the middle and the upper right, and Memphis is the lower left corner. As you can see, in our ecoregion, we have one water body in the whole ecoregion that fully supports fish and aquatic life, according to the chemical analysis and habitat. And that water body is the Hatchie Scenic River. Now, the Hatchie is a very special place. It is designated on its entire length in Tennessee as a state scenic river. And it is unique in that over the years there have been very little pressure to develop around the edges. The farmers and the landowners around the Hatchie River are great stewards. They understand, and of course with farm prices through the years, there's always a great temptation to go in and drain and plow up ground and make an economic return. A lot of the land in the Hatchie watershed is federal Fish and Wildlife Refuge. There are 3 refuges on the Hatchie. But a lot of the land is also in private hands, and families over the years have maintained a wooded wetland, bottomland hardwood environment, and they take pride in that. And so far, there's not been a development of urban pressure or suburban pressure, and we have probably been taken a little bit for granted in the fact that we had this state scenic river designation, that we were going to be good to go to carry it forward to the next generation. I have been watching for 5 years a program that was initiated to attract automobile assembly plants, and there was a very successful one in Chattanooga for the Volkswagen plant, which redeveloped a brownfield. The Volunteer Army Ammunition plant made up a half of that Volkswagen site. But this was Jimmy Nafee's district, and they named a mega site in hopes to land the Toyota plant in 2004, 10 years ago. The site didn't come there. There are other reasons. I'm sure a skilled workforce is probably necessary, and within 400 square miles of this site, we have 771 unemployed people of working age within 400 square miles of the site they chose. Of course, if you look at a satellite image like I like to do, and like I said, I live here in Memphis, grew up in Memphis, but the site chosen for the mega site is between the Big Muddy Creek and the Little Muddy Creek in the Hatchie River watershed. So you can see that probably the most connected viable bottomland hardwood forest in the West, and the only river system fully supporting fish and aquatic life is going to be affected by this site. So for the last 5 years, I have been watching and wondering, and many people expected that the wastewater from an industrial conversion of farmland and forest into industrial park would be going to the previously affected, already affected South Fork of the Fork of Deer. Here is Jackson, Tennessee. This is where we are today, right now. It's in Jackson. And the South Fork it has been straightened and channelized to some degree. There's a little bit of good habitat here. And here's Memphis. So halfway between Jackson and Memphis, the site was chosen initially for automobile assembly plant. Long story short, in February, on a notice for the renewal of Brownsville's domestic wastewater permit, which is averages about 0.6 million gallons a day, on page 41 of 87, I learned that the proposal for this industrial site is to put 1 billion gallons a year of heavy industrial waste, including metals and persistent compounds. From the site here, that little blue dot is a 80-acre industrial lagoon. They're going to collect it, send it through an 18-inch forced main into Brownsville to combine it and dilute it and treat it with their domestic waste, and then bring it back into the Hatchie River at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Refuge. So I learned about that on February 21st of this year, and there are grassroots and local people that are not happy with this, And I bring it to your attention for awareness, and I do appreciate the support that the commissioners have offered, and I hope the director and the agency can continue to offer. The agency has provided a comment letter during the official comment period that will go a long way. The Hatchie River itself is probably understudied because it has not been under development pressure. There are species there that some of our critters, of course, it is an important resource for our hunters and our fishermen, the private ground and the public ground in the refuges. But here's some of the species that are known to be in the Hatchie River watershed, and these non-game species are going to be important. We think that this cypress tree here, which will be downstream of the discharge, is the largest living thing in the state of Tennessee. So with that, I will just answer any questions. I should say that the intent of the project was for an automobile assembly plant, but it morphed a little bit over time. We don't know, and still don't know, what the eventual factories that might choose to locate there. I doubt that a nameplate automobile maker will ever choose this site. From the workforce needs, nobody wants to put their name on something that's going to go out and destroy a state scenic river. So we don't know what industries. And the interesting thing is the Department of Environment and Conservation wants to issue the permits for this site at 1 billion gallons a year without knowing what the process is. I've been in the business 18 years helping industry get their permits, and I have never seen anything like it, trying to get a permit before you even know what the operations are going to be. So I would appreciate the support, and I don't have an action item for you today, but I do appreciate the time to present this, and thank you.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions or comments? Okay.
When is this permit supposed to be reissued? Or is it something that's running on top of the dump site? Or they reissuing the permit that's there?
The permit is for a reissuance of Brownsville with a modification to include the 1 billion gallons a year.
And my question is, when is that supposed to be determined, or has it already been?
TDEC held a public hearing. They have not answered any questions of the comments that were made. There were several, over 100 comment letters made. EPA Region 4 in Atlanta has taken note of this, and they are going to review two things. One is the rules that TDEC is using for anti-degradation have not been approved by US EPA yet. And the second thing is they had a comment period for themselves. They reserved for themselves 90 days to look at this. The 90 days ended, but they're still not satisfied, I don't think. So it is, but TDEC at any moment could issue a notice of decision and say that, yes, we approve that permit. Anytime.
Anyone else on the commission? Question from the floor. You would come to the mic and state your name, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Butler with the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. I just wanted to address the commission briefly and echo what Nick has been talking about. We all, I think, would agree that we have to have a balance between growth in the environment, and it's important. But I think what is important to understand about this area is that it provides exceptional recreational opportunity for an enormous number of your constituents. I mean, it is a place where I grew up, stomping from all the way from the Mississippi line down to Rialto. And it is some of the most productive farmland in the entire state of Tennessee, especially for cotton and beans. It is something that we should not take lightly. And I think there's some things that people aren't really paying attention to with result to this project that we've raised in the past. For instance, The air quality monitors that have been around I-40, if this area starts getting built out, they are that far from tripping a non-compliance for Madison County's MSA, which means there would not be potentially the possibility of expanding an air permit or even getting a new air permit for industry because of the activity going down I-40 towards that area. And when that happens, that starts impacting economies on a much broader scale than what's going on. The state is going to spend somewhere around $150 million when this is all said and done to create a place that doesn't have infrastructure, bring it in, and develop it. We are not opposed in any way, shape, or form to economic growth or development, but there have to be smarter ways to do things than dumping that level of effluent into a river that we're not spending tax dollars that's generating a significant amount of sales tax just because of the people that recreate on it and farm around it. Farming is an enormous activity in the lower reaches of this. I will leave you with this. This is the single last main stem tributary to the Mississippi River that has not been channelized. Put that in perspective. Every other one in the United States has been channelized at some point. This is the last one. And so we don't know if there's going to be anything that the commission can do or should do for that matter. But these items have been swept under the rug and they've been pushed to the bottom of the pile. And Nick is doing a great job to elevate that visibility. And we're going to make them deal with the fact that these things in their communities and people that live there and cultures around this that have to be heard. So I would ask you just to consider that if you hear of this and you're having discussions around this.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Crabtree?
I'm Ron Crabtree, and like a lot of things I've been involved in, it was kind of by default. And when Phase 2 of the Clean Water Act became effective, I was included in that. And to say that my learning curve was steep was an understatement. And a lot of these agencies, and TDEC is no exception, they kind of have their own language, and you have to speak that language to understand it in order to communicate. And one of the showstopper things seems to be when we have attempted to make some changes in the city of Murfreesboro is a term that they use a lot called MDL. And that's maximum daily load. And simply what that is the amount of intake that a stream can digest on a daily basis. And I just wondered if they have given that MDL for this particular river. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Nick, you want to make a comment to that?
Yeah, I'll be glad to tell you that the current state of play is that Tennessee TDEC moved to consolidate some of their rules, which is helpful to those of us that consult, from the 1200s to the 0400s. This is Tennessee Code annotated. So the new definition of anti-degradation, under the 1200s, you had to present and get public justification for the economics of your proposal, and you had to assure that there was no effects to the aquatic criteria. Both. It's an and in those two clauses. What the new 400s have attempted to do is to separate that so that if they can back calculate, the ironic thing is that because the Hatchie River is clean and does meet standard, TDEC says, well, if it's above standard, we can pollute it down to the standard. So they have contrived a new definition of something they call de minimis. And they think they can predict the assimilative capacity of that stream and assign that pollution, that permit to pollute down to that standard to an industry, and in this case, a hypothetical industry that's not even there. I think once they get the permit, they'll invite any factory that wants to come along. But so The 0400s have been promulgated here, but as I say, US EPA has not passed. In Idaho, the Yellowstone group reversed when Idaho tried this. The US EPA made them back up. They even initially EPA approved it, then they said, no, this is not going to have a good effect. So the Yellowstone group got it reversed in Idaho. So the state of play on what they think is the assimilative capacity is a question of which rules you're in. If you're in the old approved current rules, this is not allowed. But since December 2013, TDEC's trying to use the new rules, and in February, the Hatchie was one of the first permits that they tried to put through under the new rules. To go a little bit further, assimilative capacity is important. This permit, as drafted and written, which they could decide any day, the permit allows 24.9 lethality, toxic, to 24% of the aquatic species under low flow, as diluted in the stream. They can kill 24.9% of the Ceradaphnia water fleas and the fathead minnow, which, now that's on your conventional pollutants. What is also scary about this is the non-conventional pollutants, the things that bioaccumulate. There is allowed in this permit mercury, chrome, zinc, lead, things that bioaccumulate in the tissues and don't have an assimilative capacity here. So it's very much in play whether this, it would not be allowed under the old rules. The new rules, they're trying to allow it. And like I said, it would allow the effluent, the toxic levels to fish and aquatic life would be 24.9% allowed, and if it's 25%, it would not be allowed. The ironic thing there is that you pull a sample, and when the test is run, you realize you've already done the damage to the stream, to more than 25% of the water fleas and fathead minnows. Those two species are the only ones they run in the laboratory to test. The other species, especially mussels, are going to be sensitive to the bioaccumulative ones.
Any more comments? Mr. Cox?
Nick, would you define for me, you said that the red line streams that you had on there did not support aquatic life. You need to explain that, because the Wolf River and others have fish and other aquatics in them. And I'm not sure what you mean by that. And also, I'd like for Dave McKinney to comment on this, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, when he gets through.
Right. This map is on the TDEC websites, and it's very good. I'm glad to see that they added this. For those of us that try to deal with this, it's a very handy way now. Before, you had a list of thousands of streams, and you had to find your stream and see. This is a list that's required by EPA every 2 years, and this particular diagram is from the 2014 draft 303D water quality list, and it will list waters that meet the criteria for all parameters and the waters that don't meet the criteria, and try to offer why it doesn't meet criteria. One example is the straightening of streams and the alteration of habitat. The cause could be siltation. Now, whether that siltation is from ag runoff or somebody needed a road crossing and they dug out the overpass and that kind of thing, is minor spot alterations. Some of it is industrial discharge. Some of it is municipal discharge. So you have direct industrial discharge and you have municipal discharge as well. And that can affect. The interesting thing is the applicant in this case is Brownsville, and they had a noncompliance still from 2010 for their monitoring from 2008 to 2010. They still have a director's order. They haven't addressed on that. And then since then, the 3 years since then, they violated 8 of the last 12 quarters. That's on their conventional pollutants. That's just household waste. You might notice here, the Wolf River is good for some sections. But in our ecoregion, this is the Mississippi Los Plains, geological, I'm not a geologist, but this geological ecoregion is hard to meet, but like the few places that do meet. So this is a yes or no, does it meet the criteria or does it not? So there will be aquatic life, there will be fish, even in the red streams, but it doesn't compare well to the reference section, which would be an unaltered situation. I'm not sure I answered your question. Did I get?
Well, you kind of did at the end. I mean, you
there
danced around it, but I
will be
think you
aquatic
finally
life in
got
the
to
red
it.
streams, but it's the criteria for keeping quality streams, and the Hatchie is cleaner than it needs to be, and TDEC thinks they can pollute down to that criteria.
Commissioner Rice?
Yes.
Dick, if this permit wasn't tagged on to the city of Brownsville and it was a standalone industrial permit, in your opinion, would it be granted?
Not at all. It could not be granted. There is no promise of any pretreatment or metals removal or any, and that's why they're using it. They're getting it over to Brownsville for 2 reasons. One is it would never get a permit by itself. And secondly, because this part of the planet is so sparsely populated, they needed to get some of the bacteria to handle the conventional pollutants. There'll still be pass-through metals. There'll still be pass-through what we call persistent organic and persistent inorganic compounds to go through the Brownsville system, but they need some of the microbes from the Brownsville municipal to treat and dilute what they're planning to do. As a standalone industrial permit, first of all, you'd have to say what operations, what industrial processes you propose to make the discharge. This is
Everything's a phantom at this point.
it's a hypothetical permit. It's a hypothetical processes from a hypothetical set of factories. I don't know how many factories they'll invite. But right now, if you go out there today, there is absolutely no change in the last 10 years. It is crop field and forest. And I have to disagree a little bit with Mike Butler. He said 150 million. My personal estimate, they would be talking about a new railroad, highway moves. The forced main is 16 miles of forced pipe they say they're going to horizontal directional drill underneath 16 miles of wetland across the Big Muddy Bottom, across the Hatchie Bottom to get it into Brownsville. So there's nothing out there today that has happened in the last 10 years. The property was purchased. The options were extended in 2006. The property was purchased in 2009, I think in anticipation of the Chinese to come make solar panels. And then if you go out there today, it's not going to be 150 million, Mike. I think it's going to be close. My estimate is 300 million yet to be spent to get this thing ready for a workforce that's not there.
All right. No deliberating between the crowd. Remember the rules. Mr. Keeney, you've been requested to come to the mic. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. First of all, there's nothing you've heard today from Mike or Mr. Crafton that we don't support in issues that we haven't raised with EPA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and TDEC. It's an ongoing process here. I'll start with what's before you, and that is most of the red you see in West Tennessee is because of siltation. It's runoff. It doesn't mean that those streams don't have fish and aquatic life or are not attractive for recreation and paddling. It means there's a problem there, and the state's not going to be, under its Water Quality Act, not going to put it on a fully supporting list until those problems are solved. A little bit about the change in the anti-degradation rule, and that is important to understand. Under the old rule, exceptional Tennessee waters required that in order to have a discharge, you had to go through several steps. One was you had to show alternatives. Are there alternatives to the action that you propose? The other thing you had to do was do an economic necessity analysis, and then you had to demonstrate that your proposed activity would not cause degradation of those waters. So under the new rules, the economic analysis and the alternative analysis have been stripped out if the state determines up front that an activity is de minimis, that you don't have to go to that additional step. It's not clear whether EPA is going to accept that change. When Tennessee accepted primacy of EPA's water quality program, they also accepted EPA's rule. And in EPA's water quality rule, there's something called no backsliding. So the anti-degradation statement is kind of backstopped by the no backsliding rule. Now, whether EPA will finesse that, that's yet to be determined. The issues that we have raised for this particular project, and I'll preface this by saying what the state, the Economic Community Development, is attempting to do is to say to potential investors and industry, come to this site, it has been pre-approved, all of the environmental issues have been resolved. This started out as a solar farm with solar panels, and it was relatively easy to say all the environmental issues have been resolved. There are no wetlands or mitigation, there's no streams, and if you do have to move them. So those issues had been foreseen. When it morphed into something for a major manufacturing heavy industry like the automobile industry, that changed the dynamic completely. So the issues we have raised and that we've not had a response from TDEC or from EPA, nor has the Fish and Wildlife Service had a response, and they've raised these same issues. The first one being pretreatment. If you're going to have a major industrial site, it's common practice to gather all of those waste, even if it's from multiple operations, and pre-treat that waste before you send it to somewhere to be blended with, for instance, domestic waste. They don't even know what they'll be treating here. So to issue a permit without knowing what level of pretreatment is required is something that has not happened in my experience. The other issue is this business of taking this waste, potentially pretty serious waste, under the Hatchie National Refuge, under those wetlands, through a force main, has got some big problems. First of all, you've got the directional bore, which means you're using bentonite clay, which has got problems for amphibians. Then you've got a main that's under pressure constantly for the life of the program. So you're going to have to monitor whether that thing fails, whether it's pumping waste out into the refuge. Then you've got the issue of, at Brownsville, whether this is compatible with municipal waste. We've asked for a limit of whole effluent, no toxicity in the whole effluent here, which is a reasonable request given that you're going into such an important aquatic resource. We've asked that juvenile mussels be added to the toxicity testing requirement in addition to EPA's normal thing. And the agency helped develop the protocols for juvenile mussel toxicity testing. We've also asked for a thorough biological assessment of the Hatchie River downstream of this waste, including mussels and their fish host and sport fish. Keep in mind that the hatchie, as paddle sports become more and more a bigger part of our recreational scene. And if you go to ramps, you're going to see kayakers, you're going to see canoeists, paddle boards, you're going to see all manner of people. The hatchie is a destination, and its draw for outdoor enthusiasts, whether it's hunters, fishermen, bird watchers, whatnot, is just really going to be increasingly valuable over the years. So appreciate Mr. Crafton bringing this discussion forward. I'm pleased to provide the agency, the commission with copies of the agency's comments to EPA up to this point, and would be pleased to come back and keep you informed. I'm certain that Mr. Crafton will keep us all informed. He's been tireless on this issue.
Anyone on the commission, hold on a second. Anyone on the commission have a question for Mr.
Do you have any indication on what the EPA's position is? I mean, they're so intensively protective of everything. I can't imagine if this is that bad that they're gonna approve this.
I don't. They've been not silent on this, but they're taking their time. They're reviewing it thoroughly. I don't think you're going to see a quick decision coming from EPA.
Where does the water supply come from? That's a lot of water.
It is. It'll come from the Memphis Sands aquifer underneath. And I should mention that aquifer is very high quality and it's extensive, and all of West Tennessee, west of the Tennessee River, gets their drinking water there. That is another consideration. For locating this industrial activity, you're in Fayette and Haywood and Tipton counties, you're kind of on what we call the recharge zone for those Memphis Sands aquifer. And when all else fails, the Memphis Sands aquifer is going to be great water as long as we keep protecting it for a long time to come. But if you get out on the recharge zones, there are lenses or areas where the groundwater can eventually make it into that Memphis Sands aquifer. You're on the edge of that geologic deposit. And so it's not an immediate threat. It wouldn't be. But if you spill bad things out on the recharge zone, it can eventually start affecting water supply for cities, but the water would be coming from the deeper Memphis Sands aquifer. I should mention, this is just in passing, but a lot of people get concerned about the center pivots and what they're doing. My experience is that these center pivots are really just duplicating a rain, and it's only part of the year. And it's taking some shallow water, making use of it, and it goes right back to where it comes from. So the farmers know this. It's not like they're depleting the water table like maybe over in some of our duck hunting ground in Arkansas. But the center pivots I see in West Tennessee are pulling from a shallower aquifer. They're duplicating a rain. If they're putting water down the ditch, they're wasting their money, and they don't want to do that. But the center pivots in my book are not anything to worry about. It's the constant year-round draw of water out of an aquifer, out of a drinking water system for a town of Brownsville or any town, Arlington, Lakeland. They get their drinking water all from the Memphis Sands aquifer, and this is where this industry would get their drinking water, their water supply. And I don't see that as a very hard problem to solve. It's just if they contaminate it and put it in the hatchie, then it goes down into the aquifer and in the recharge area. And these wetlands do provide a very good service to allow that water some recharge time.
It's interesting down at the Wolf River, comes out of Mississippi, and they channelized it up to the state line. And years ago, when they did that Memphis Sands had a plume that came up, and you could see the waste was white sand, and you could see it from an aerial map where they stopped. They had sprayed the white sand all out on the bank from where the aquifer plume came up to the surface.
Yeah.
Chairman Cannon.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Commissioner Cannon's got the floor. Then I'll go to you, Commissioner.
Very quickly.
David, I read your letter. I thought it was excellent. The points you laid out, excuse me, asked for clarification on. It was an excellent letter, well thought out, and I appreciate, on behalf of the commission, I appreciate how you've represented the agency in that.
Well, thank you.
I do as well. I appreciate the letter.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is potentially a serious problem, and I would like to ask the agency to give us regular reports on this, to keep us apprised, and let us know what we can do to help. Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Any more from the audience? Mr. Crafton, appreciate you allowing me to move you to today. And for me personally, I appreciate your passion and love for the environment and watching out for those of us that don't keep up with it maybe as well as you do. But I appreciate.
Just paying it forward a little bit.
I understand. Well,
Thank you.
all of us' number one goal in here is to protect the resource no matter what. And thank you for your time today. Tell you what, let's do real quick. Let's take about a 10-minute break.